G'day everyone, I'm the Anti-Theocrat back with you again for another one. Let's see if we can get through this without me having to hack and cough. I've got over the lurgy pretty much, but it's left me with a tickly throat occasionally. So reading and talking, not so good. The ABC. I'm going to take a look at four stories from the ABC. And I thought we'd start off by just seeing where they go with this article. Author Jordan Peterson is recovering from physical dependence to benzodiazepine in Russia. Okay, I have no problem with the headline. It's pretty straightforward, although author's pretty limiting. Best-selling Canadian author and academic, a little bit better. Jordan Peterson is undergoing rehabilitation from a physical dependence to the tranquilizer drug benzodiazepine, his family says. And this is why we're covering the article, because you knew the ABC couldn't do without this bit. Mr. Peterson is a popular right-wing figure known for rallying against political correctness, feminism, and cultural Marxism. Well, he's known for that, but it's not the core of his work, is it? You could have described him in a different way. Also, I don't know that I agree that he's right-wing. I don't find him at all that way, and I believe he keeps his political leanings to himself quite a bit. Now, he does have some religious leaning, but being religious doesn't automatically make you right-wing. I mean, there was a large mass of religious people who supported gay marriage and so forth. Religion doesn't automatically make you right-wing. So, I'm not sure how true this is. Are you sure this is true? You seem to be assuming that being against political correctness, feminism, and cultural Marxism, two of which you put in inverted commas, because I don't know, do you not believe they exist or something? Political correctness, inverted commas, cultural Marxism, inverted commas, but not feminism. So what are you trying to tell us about these two? The ABC doesn't believe that the ABC is all about political correctness and cultural Marxism, because I tell you they are. But anyway, I'm centre-left, always have been. I'm centrist with very mild left leanings. I'm not so much right leaning. I tend to question where I have right leanings harder than I do with my left leanings. So, no, look, when I say that, abortion, right, it's an issue. I don't like to think about it too much because I don't think it's an issue I'm involved with, that I'm invested in. But when I question what's going on with the arguments, then I do question that. Whereas when I think gay marriage, I think, no, fair enough. Look, if you're going to let one partnered group of people have a thing, then you let all partnered groups of people have a thing. Sorry, told you that cough was going to get me. So, you know, I have left leanings less than I have right leanings. I'm very centrist, and I find Mr. Peterson to be the same way, but why is he not then centrist or left leaning if he appeals to me? I'm not a fanboy, not at all. But if he has some appeal to me, I understand where the man's coming from. I understand what he's saying to people. He's not my cup of tea. I do not like self-help gurus. I think if you need a guru to discover you've got to help yourself, you've already gone down the wrong path. I'm quite okay with him saying to people, sort out your own shit. But when you're treating him like a guru, then you're already not sorting out your own shit. You rely on him to tell you to sort out your own shit. I don't know. Look, it's a difficult one, but I'm not a fanboy. I have problems with his religious analogies and so forth, but that's me as an atheist. It doesn't detract from his main message, which is why this being made the issue that the ABC came to the front with, rather than his self-help, get off your own ass and do shit. They had to come out as the right-wing figure known for these things. It stinks a little bit of brushed with tarnish, doesn't it? In a video posted to his YouTube channel, Mr. Peterson's daughter, Michaela, said he had been suffering from physical dependency on the drug, which he was prescribed for anxiety for 8 months. Now, the video here is attached. I've watched the video, I watched it elsewhere, and I know this isn't true. I'm not sure how you call yourself a journalist, getting this point so wrong, but the next point is where we learn a bit more. Mr. Peterson began taking benzodiazepine when he had an extreme severe autoimmune reaction to food, which his daughter in the video clearly says is several years ago. This 8 months suggests that he was taking extremely high doses since February 2019 when he appeared on Q&A. Did Q&A cause this? Is that what you're trying to say? And then because he was so depressed for 8 months, he was taking extreme doses and got himself addicted. I don't know if this was deliberate or not, but after this, I can't help but question where your intentions are, what you're trying to say, because this is false. The video which you have linked, which you clearly watched, did not say 8 months ago. It said, she said, with the dosage being raised after his wife was diagnosed with cancer 8 months ago. So he was already on the drug, a low dose, and taking it as prescribed, and he took a higher dose after being prescribed for it 8 months ago. The problem is, and a thing you're not going to mention here, excuse me again, is that even though this is a tranquilizer, it had the opposite effect on this gentleman. And his daughter also says that in the video. This drug did not have the effect of calming the gentleman down. He has been in unbearable discomfort from this drug, made worse when trying to remove it, because of the additional withdrawal symptoms stemming from the physical dependence. Now, I can tell you physical dependence is a horrid thing to see other people come through. My father was on 11 drops of morphine after being wiped out off his motorcycle by a 70s Ford Fairlane back in the 1980s. 11 drops of morphine a minute. And the hospital filled out the paperwork wrong to take him off it, and he went from 11 to 0. And I can tell you, the DTs, for someone with massive injuries, is much worse than surely this. But just watching someone go through the DTs, that's hard. Detrimental traumas, for those of you who don't know, it's what happens when you are breaking physical dependence on a drug. It took some hours for the hospital to realise the mistake they'd made and put my father back on the morphine and wean him off. So I know what this looks like. I know how hard it is. Anyway, Ms. Peterson, who herself gives talks on self-help topics, because we had to make sure everyone knew she was a proper right-winger as well, said her father was suffering from an endless, irresistible, relentless, bordering on panic and an inability to sit still. The reaction made him suicidal. Now, does this sound like the normal reaction of a tranquilizer? No, it is not. This is exactly the opposite to what this is meant to do. It's not unusual for certain drugs in this field to make you feel suicidal, but the restlessness, the bordering on panic, and the inability to sit still are not normal reactions. Now, apparently, he was having this reaction to a small degree for the years that he was on this drug, and after the increase, it became more noted. That apparently is a very difficult thing to diagnose when a drug is doing something it's not meant to be doing. And so when they realised, it was pretty much too late. The damage was done. But the ABC don't mention that. They mention this as if the physical dependence gained over a period of 8 months is why he was having this reaction. I'm not sure what they're trying to push. I'm not sure what story they're going with. This video, connected to their story, has all the information that I have just given you. It is all there. It is simply stated. She did a really good job of presenting what was happening. This article tells me whoever wrote this is no sort of journalist. The University of Toronto psychology professor has more than 2.5 million followers on YouTube and authored the book, the 2018 book, 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos. Okay, while being true, I wonder what they're trying to say. Because, look, I know the spiel with this one is, look, the man who says you help yourself can't help himself, he's in rehab. No, the fact that he reached out for rehab means he is helping himself. I don't know how that skips over people's heads, that people who are not helping themselves are not in rehab, and not because of a court order or anything, right? He and people around him just knew he wasn't well. They realised he had a drug dependency through medically prescribed drugs, and they're trying to break it before he becomes Michael Jackson. You get it? This is self-help. And I have a concern that this being put here is in some way meant to be saying to self-help. Obviously, this guru doesn't know how to do it. No, sorry. He visited Australia in February 2019 and appeared on the ABC's Q&A program. Yes, he did. He was selling his book, I believe, and you brought him on the Q&A and tried to tear him down, and he, in his manner, quite calmly ripped you a new one. Attempts at treating Mr. Peterson in numerous North American hospitals has failed, his daughter said, requiring him to seek an emergency detox program in Russia. Now, she pretty much spelled out that the only place an emergency detox program existed was in Russia. So, yeah. The decision to bring him to Russia was made in extreme desperation when we couldn't find any better option, she said. The uncertainty around his recovery has been one of the most difficult and scary experiences we've ever had. Mr. Peterson himself will provide the next update on his condition. Yes, my belief is that the emergency detox has worked. He is coming out as healthy as can be expected in the circumstances. Maybe healthier. But as I have pointed out when I brought this up, I don't expect this man to collapse in a heap at the end of this. He sought help for a dependency because he believes in helping yourself. This is a man who's going to get up, and maybe he won't do the public circuit so much anymore. Maybe he'll settle back into life a bit. This has been a scary time. But he's not going to sit back and just let his life rot away. It's not what he believes in. It's not the core of what he believes. He will get himself together and live his life as best he can after this event. And that's all anyone's ever asking. Get your ass off the bloody seat you're sitting on. Me too. I'm sitting on a seat. And get on with it. So yes, I expect he will provide the next update, because that's the position he will take. Alright, I don't have much more to say on that one. I just wanted to find out how the ABC had covered this. And by leaving out significant parts and throwing this in, they haven't exactly gone heavily on the attack. This has been like a really subtle jibe. Bringing up his daughter does self-help topics too. Then dig into this, like after all of this. Yeah, I don't know. Look, I get the feeling this is a really subtle dig on behalf of the ABC. Either that or their journalist is useless and couldn't get the facts straight. Okay, let's look at the next story, shall we? The High Court rules Aboriginal people cannot be deported for criminal convictions, cannot be alien to Australia. Now, clearly we're not talking about Aboriginal people. We're talking about people of mixed racial ethnicities, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't even be discussing this. Otherwise, you'd be discussing where would you send me if I'd ended up in prison, where I've never lived anywhere else in the world, and both of my parents are Australian citizens. And I have another problem with this, because my mother was Dutch born, and I have no attachments or anything to Holland. In fact, my mother doesn't, because she was naturalised by her father when they arrived in Australia when she was very young. The Dutch actually will not let her claim any sort of Dutch national identity. It's in their rules, and so because she can't claim it, nor can I. So I have a parent who was not born an Australian national. Could I be thrown out of this country if I went to prison? I spent a short while living in China when I was getting married and met my wife and was getting married. But, you know, I mean, what's that? Where are you going to send me? What are you going to do with me? I'm actually... see, this is a difficult one, because I don't actually believe that when someone has been in this country for the majority of their life and we've let them be here for that long, that we don't have any responsibility to them. There was a woman, I think she was, 50s or older, and she'd been here since she was 4, and she'd been in and out of prison on drug sentences for a while anyway. With all this new immigration crap going on, they decided they were deporting her to the place that her parent or parents were from. And she didn't speak the language. She'd never lived there. She had no connection to it. She was raised in Australia from the age of 4. I think at that point we still have a responsibility. We created that person. Our system created that person. However fucked up they are, we made them. And I don't think we just get to deport them when we made them. And maybe that's the case with these people. What worries me is that they've been able to lean on their aboriginality to get this decision in their favour. I don't know what happened to the woman in question. She probably got deported, because she wasn't an Aboriginal. But anyway, this black fella here, sorry, I have to point that out. This is the most honky looking black fella I've ever seen in my life. And he's the one they actually favoured. The High Court has found Aboriginal people hold a special status and are exempt from immigration laws after considering the cases of 2 men facing deportation for criminal convictions. two Indigenous men, Daniel Love and Brendan Thoms, have faced deportation since failing their migration character test as a result of serving jail sentences in a 4-3 split. So this wasn't an easy one for the court either. 4-3 split, that's one vote could have swung it. The High Court today found Aboriginal Australians were not subject to the alien powers in the Constitution and could therefore not be deported under immigration law. My mother's Dutch heritage can be traced 400 years, apparently. That's quite an achievement in a place like Holland. Its history's quite an interesting thing. So to be able to track your heritage, your Dutch heritage, 400 years is quite something. But it doesn't give me any special appeal to my Dutch blood. So I do not know why anyone who might be able to show 1/16 Aboriginal heritage and dig back that far can be simply made not subject to these alien powers. I don't get that. I'm sorry. I see this as just another special allowance for Aboriginal people. Like I said, I think there are more people that we need to take responsibility for. We essentially need to take responsibility for anyone raised in this country, educated in this country, who breaks the law. Well, we created that person. Like it or lump it, we are the place they learned that shit. If they moved over here at the age of 25 and broke the law at the age of 28, I'd say get rid of the fucker. And I don't care if they're Aboriginal or not. But yes, all I see here, and these things are important for me because so often I hear Europeans and Americans and so forth saying, "Oh, you Australians, you keep your black fellas down." Look, I can't even put a video together where I could mention all of the advantages that being Aboriginal gives you, because there are so many advantages to being Aboriginal in this country that when something like this crops up, I can't help but think another special privilege. Like I said, there was a woman from some other island nation who's probably been deported now. She was here from the age of 4. Here for 50 or more years. And yet, deport her. I don't agree with this at all. I think this is bad policy. Anyway, one of these guys was... Oh, hang on. This is the important bit. But the court did not clear Mr. Love entirely, saying it could not reach agreement on whether he was an Aboriginal person or the facts stated in the case. But they've erred on the side of safety. Because he claimed to be an Aboriginal. They can't show that he's an Aboriginal, but they're not going to make the mistake of evicting an Aboriginal. This is like the Bruce Pascoe thing, isn't it? ABC? Get this? Bruce Pascoe? He's a POM. His family are POMs. He's not an Aboriginal. Just because he claimed it doesn't make him an Aboriginal. But anyway, this is how lenient we are when it comes to Aboriginal issues. How much we will bend for Aboriginal issues. Anyway, they've apparently spent their lives in Australia, which as far as I'm concerned makes them our business whether they're Aboriginal or not. And whether they were born overseas or not doesn't make the issue... The issue remains one of they were essentially in Australia from young ages. One was born in Papua New Guinea, one in New Zealand, and if they've spent more than 20, 30 years in this country, then they're our responsibility. Sorry, I don't give a damn if they're Aboriginal or not. And I just see this as Aboriginal privilege. Okay, as you can see, this is important enough that this is the headline on today's news. Sydney news. Wild weather leaves residents homeless and without power as Sydney continues flooding cleanup. For the record, I'm currently in my third day without internet. These rains seem to have broken our national broadband network. So, yeah, it's pretty bad storms, really, isn't it? What I'm wondering here, because look, flood evacuation's still in place, rivers are up, lowlands, power outages that have lasted for days. You know the word that's missing here. Trail bike rider dies, there's a funeral for a girl. You know what's missing? Not one word about how the climate change created this problem. 2 weeks ago, it was all about the drought and the fires and climate change. And this week, it's pissing down raining for a week and not a word of climate change. Not a single bloody word. These storms breaking the dry are not unusual. These are quite common, usual weather patterns. We get used to them out here in the dry middle bit because it's more notable when it's dry and when it's wet. The Sydney siders don't see it as bad. They get a lot more wet. But floods and not one word of climate change. Apparently climate change only causes the hot stuff, by the ABC's reckoning. Alright, one last story, and I'll let it go. This is, by the way, this is a fairly flippant and short and light story, video, I know. I've been feeling a bit out of sorts the last few days, problems with the ICMI and what have you, and just leaving me wondering why we fucking bother. Anyway, the guys say don't give up yet, so I'll make a video. And it'll be this one. No matter how light or easygoing it seems, here it is. Last story, sorry about that explanatory shit in the middle there. Flat wages and soaring house prices are condemning Australians to a lifetime of renting. And again, I have to say, thank you, feminism. And it's sort of a two-way street with thanking feminism here, because house prices have gone up, which is a result in part to declining numbers of public housing projects being implemented. Public housing used to be a real thing in this country, and by providing cheap, affordable rental accommodation, which, if you stayed in it long enough, you could be offered the right to buy. I'm in a public housing neighbourhood, and several of the houses around me were purchased by owners at some point. This is a privately rented one, so this one has been in that situation. The one next door has just been purchased. It was also privately bought by someone. So these houses were essentially cheap rental and cheap purchase, and they created a bottom end of the market. And then for years we had two-income families. Yay to the women's movement. Not feminism particularly. I'm not actually blaming feminism for this, because I don't actually believe feminism has done anything for anyone. But in fighting for women to get into the workforce and all the rest of the things that they've gotten women to do, and I do not think that's a terrible thing. I think that's a good thing. The problem is not allowing men to step out of the workforce, continuing the pressure on men to be the wage earners and supporting the family and so forth, and even continuing where we've got these massive divorce rates and so forth, and men have to continue to work to support families they don't even have anymore. These issues the feminists never thought to tackle or bring up. Not their issue. Men's issues. It's all about equality until you actually want a feminist to talk about men's issues. Then it's about how it affects women. And of course it affects women if men don't work, because women don't get as much money to spend. So, yeah. unfortunately, driving one half of the population into the workforce, and it starts in our schools. I know I've had this discussion before. It starts in our schools where everyone's taught that what they're aiming for is a workforce. Nobody's taught that becoming an at-home parent or being at home doing up cars in the garage all day while the wife goes to work and you look after the kids doing up cars. Running a business, as I've gone ahead and done, they're not acceptable outcomes. They're not taught in school. Everyone is taught the same. You're heading for the workforce, you're heading for university. And the two-income family is part of this problem. The two-income family made this problem. Flat wages. Wages didn't have to go up because the government and business saw every family having more money as more and more, essentially since the 1980s, more women have gone into the workforce. We've had more two-income families. There's been more reason for daycare centres looking after and raising people's children for them. And so flat wages were a real issue. Now we've come to the point where, 50% divorce rate, incels, spinsters with their cats, feminists, that is. And suddenly there's not so many two-income families, or the two-income families are having to pay out for daycare and so forth, or whatever else it is, and housing affordability, which was nice when in the early days of the two-income family because there was more money and wages didn't go up because there was so much more money. But that extra money meant people could afford houses, and they were willing to pay big money for houses, and they built the flash houses they could. And the government saw that there wasn't as much demand for public housing because there was a little bit more money and a little bit more mansion building, and hey, we got to the end of it. It can only go on so long. And now we got people crying poor. Yeah, I get it. Look, I could read you the rest of this story, but it's just not worth it. Basically, since the 1990s, renters have gone up 20%. They expect more people are going to end up in rental for the rest of their lives. And I agree. The key points here are 1 in 4 Australians live in privately rented homes. The number of renters in Australia has increased by 20% since the mid-1990s. Flat wages and high house prices mean that more Australians facing a lifetime of renting. I'm one of those Australians. I'm battling at the moment to buy a first house. I'm an old fart. I'm past the stage where I should be considering buying a first home, but I am. I thought I was going to rent forever. I've got a partner who's young enough to still have the excitement about buying, but I'd given up. So I'm back in that market again. But I had given up. I expected to rent forever. So, yeah, I get it. I understand this. What I don't get is the conversations not being had. Why do we have flat wages? Why have, for a couple of decades now, economists praised the economy for being so stable because of wage stability? Why? Because they saw more money in the families, and they decided that we didn't need pay rises. Why? Soaring house prices. Because there was more money through the 90s, the late 80s, 90s, into the 2000s, in those households where two people were working. And that more money meant they bought flasher houses. They didn't want public housing. They wanted something nice in the suburbs or in the new estate up the road or whatever. And so they bought these flash houses. Then they had money over for an investment property. And let's face it, we've all got to have an investment property to look after our futures. There was a big sell on investment properties for all this spare money lying around. And there was superannuation and all these other things that were thrown in to try and suck up this spare money. Now the spare money doesn't exist. There are lots of expensive houses and no wage increases. And it all comes from the same place. We allowed the single income family to die. We allowed it to become a thing of the past. Oh well, I don't know how we get past this. I'm essentially in a single income home. If I didn't have two partners, I would be on one income. And it's not easy. And the idea that I was going to be in the rental market forever was in my head. The world is broken. It's been broken for 30 odd years. But we've just come to realise how broken. Like I say, I don't deny women the right to work. The problem is, they never looked at the whole problem and took it all into account. And the governments and business didn't care. Because they want more people in the workforce. They want more people paying tax. They want more people in the job pool so that wages can come down or remain stable. They're not interested in whether you can buy a house in 20 years' time. They're not interested in whether your kids can buy a house. They don't care about that. All they want is what's good for them. And we let them do it. Because we didn't see it. None of us saw it. And we're not talking about it now. It's about time we did. It's about time we said this problem is a problem of 30 years of our fucking lazy asses not being awake to the idea that this was going to be a problem. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to get out of here. I have covered my 4 articles. Hopefully they weren't too dreary for you all. I've been the Anti-Theocrat. I'm out of here. May your gods remain fictional and all the rest of that. I'll see you in the next one.